So apologies for another weird intro to the video, but my brain after last week's video kind of got stuck in this what is this thing's purpose mode, looking at an object, looking at its features and its design and trying to figure out what its purpose is or how those features support the purpose it was designed for. Take my coffee mug here, for instance. It's the perfect size for a cup of coffee. It's a good size for just a regular mug of coffee. It's made of ceramic, which helps to hold on to the heat, as my hand will tell you right now. It's got the handle as well, which helps to keep your hand off of the hot ceramic so you don't burn yourself. It's even got, I don't know if the camera's picking this up, but it's got this nice little pattern on it, and the texture of the mug itself is just nice. It's just pleasant. Every piece of this mug was sort of designed for the purposes of holding coffee or tea or another hot beverage. This thing has a purpose. But what happens when that purpose gets broken? It's a bit of a mess, isn't it? Welcome to our second video in our series, What is Meant by Lent. If you haven't yet watched the first video, I recommend doing that, but if you don't have time, let me run through it here real quick for you. There you go, you all caught up? Well, come with me and I'll do my best to try to bring you up to speed. I just need to get some paper towels and a broom to help clean this up. There we go, portable mode engaged. So the last video, we talked about the idea that we were made by God out of love and made for relationship. This is actually something Jesus tells us in the Gospel of Matthew as well. He says the two great commandments are to love the Lord your God with all of your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. Two commands, nothing could be simpler. But we know that's not the case, right? This is the bad news. We break the relationships that we were built for. With God, we sometimes have actions or intentions that don't align with what He wants for us or from us. With other people, well, sometimes we hurt people who are strangers, and that's bad, but sometimes it's even worse, and we hurt those who are closest to us. And then, going even further than that, sometimes we have a bad relationship with ourselves. We treat ourselves in ways that don't reflect the belief that we were created in the image of God. When we do any of these things, when we break any of these key relationships that we were built for, we are breaking our purpose. This is what the church refers to as sin. Breaking these key relationships, not showing love for God and not showing love for other people. We reject our purpose. We become broken. And this brokenness is not a new problem. It goes all the way back to the beginning. Listen to the book of Genesis and what it says. This is reading just a little bit further than what we did last time. The serpent said to the woman, "Did God say you shall not eat from any tree in the garden?" The woman said to the serpent, "We may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but God said, you shall not eat of the fruit of the tree that is in the middle of the garden, nor shall you touch it, or you shall die." But the serpent said to the woman, "You will not die. For God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." So when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was desired to make one wise, she took of its fruit and ate. She also gave some to her husband, who was with her, and he ate. Then the eyes of both were opened, and they knew that they were naked. And they sewed fig leaves together and made loincloths for themselves. They heard the sound of the Lord God walking in the garden at the time of the evening breeze. And the man and his wife hid themselves from the presence of the Lord God among the trees of the garden. But the Lord God called out to the man and said to him, "Where are you?" He said, "I heard the sound of you in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked and hid myself." He said, "Who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten of the tree which I commanded you not to eat?" The man said, "The woman who you gave to be with me, she gave me fruit from the tree, and I ate." Then the Lord God said to the woman, "What is this that you have done?" And the woman said, "The serpent tricked me, and I ate." Now, ultimately, I'm going to bet that most of our lives are going to have dramatically fewer talking snakes or objectively divinely forbidden fruits. But that being said, what the story of Adam and Eve is about still plays a factor in everyone's life. Because what the story of Adam and Eve is about, ultimately, is how we as human beings allow trust for God to die in our own hearts. And, well, that can create quite a mess here. As we saw with Adam and Eve as well, their relationship with God dying in their hearts allowed their relationship with each other to die in their hearts too. They turned to bickering and arguing and blaming one another for the problems that had happened. And so, what are we to do? We've broken the relationships that we were made for, the ones that are most important to us, our relationships with God and our relationships with other people. But this is where the good news starts to break back in again. The best news starts to break back in, because God tells us in that passage in Genesis that from minute one, He has a plan to restore us to the relationships that we were made to have. This is what God says to the serpent, the sower of division in the story. "I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers. He will strike at your head, and you will strike at his heel." God's doing a lot of heavy lifting in that passage, not least of which is cleaning up the mess that Adam and Eve had made. But what God is also doing is foreshadowing a plan of repair and restoration. God is going to fix what Adam and Eve had broken. God is going to do what we ourselves can't, mend the division between us and Him. This isn't just good news. This is the best news that we can receive. But it's the news that we're going to be talking about next week. So I hope you'll stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, how should we respond to the bad news? Well, during Lent, a lot of times you'll hear people taking up the practice of fasting. Fasting's where we control or limit our food intake for a particular period of time. Catholics also practice what's called abstinence, where we avoid, eating meat on Fridays. And you may know a lot of other people who do little small sacrifices. You know, someone who gives up coffee for Lent, or gives up chocolate, or chips or pop, or something else, something they normally use and enjoy. Now, these various practices of giving things up aren't meant to be a kind of self-punishment, although sometimes it can feel or even be treated that way. In reality, though, the practice of fasting and abstinence is kind of like spiritual spring training. It encourages us, strengthens us in our ability to say no to ourselves with something that doesn't matter, like pop or chips. And so when those moments where we have to say no to ourselves and it does matter, when we're trying to follow God a lot of the time, we can say no and be ready for it. So that being said, what elements of fasting might be good spiritual spring training for you? Where could you grow a little smaller in your life to allow your relationship with God to get a lot bigger? It could be something with a direct impact, for instance, like maybe you need more prayer time in your life, but you spend a lot of time scrolling through social media. Well, a social media fast might be what the doctor ordered. Or perhaps it's something unrelated, just a practice you want to get in the discipline of doing. Maybe it is chips. Maybe you give up chips for Lent because that's your go-to snack after work or after school, and giving that up would be a challenge. It would be a discipline to say no to doing that, and that's a good way to train us up in being able to say no when it doesn't matter, so we can say no when it does. So, we've had the good news that we're made by God out of love in order to have relationship with Him and others. And today we've had the bad news that through sin, we've broken that relationship in a way that we can't fix on our own. And next week, we'll hear about the best news, the news that God has not abandoned us, but instead has a plan to restore and repair the relationship that we had broken. So, all I can say is I hope you'll join us next Friday for the best news. And if you'll excuse me today, I've got bits of cup all over that I really should clean up. See ya.